gentlemen, and welcome to the planning committee. Item 1, members, is it your wish I sign the records, the minutes as a correct record of the last meeting, please?
Agreed.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Apologies for absence.
Apologies to Senior Councillor Cecilia Miswick, Diana Osborne and Daventry, Chairman.
Okay, I think we're full otherwise, aren't we? Well, nearly full. Okay. Members' interests. First of all, disposable interests. If you find you have some during the meeting, just say so. And party whipping arrangements. So members of the public, that means political groups or any groups don't get together and decide if they're going to vote beforehand. It's all done on the evening. There are no applications withdrawn, but there's a bit of housekeeping to tell you. First of all, if the alarm bell rings, it's not a practice. If you could please leave the room the way you came in. Could you switch your mobile devices to silent? We don't want any rings. The proceedings have been recorded. Speakers will have 3 minutes. After that you'll hear a tone and you'll be asked to wind up. I'm sure you will do, but if you don't, you'll be told politely to wind up. It's the only opportunity you have to speak, so please don't interrupt on the rest of the debate. And I'm sure you won't again, but don't clap, boo, hiss or cheer. I'm sure you won't. You'll see officers talking while you're talking perhaps, and it looks awfully bad manners. It's the only way we can get an answer to what you're saying for when you finish speaking, so please bear with us on that. And now members, an update on performance. This is to the end of September because it runs from September, well, for 2 years actually. We're 82% of majors dealing with on time and 6% majors on appeal, so the figures are still the same, but pretty good. But they go on a 2-year period, so they start again after September, correct? Yeah. Also members, before we start the meeting, there is a Royal, Town Planning Institute, there's some places for a conference that anybody can go to. I can't go and the Vice Chairman can't go. So if anybody's interested, it's in Birmingham. It's on the 28th of November, and it's 9:15 to 4:15 at the NEC. So
About what, Chair?
Sorry?
About what?
What's it actually saying?
It's the National Conference for Politicians in Planning.
It hasn't got a specific subject.
It's on a Saturday.
But if anybody's interested, if you let us know afterwards, we can book you in. Right, we're off then on the first planning application, which is in Staverton, and the number is 0429.
Thank you, Chairman. The site is located within the grounds of a Grade 2 listed building and also within Staverton's conservation area. The Council therefore has a requirement to preserve or enhance the conservation area as well as the designated heritage asset, i.e. the listed building. The site is considered to be located in an important space as it has also been identified within the conservation area designation booklet for Staverton. The levels on the site, as you see within the photographs, will also change. The proposal is for the construction of a 2-storey dwelling. The proposed property is a large property. There was a previous application on the site for 2 dwellings. This was withdrawn following discussion with officers. The policy procedure has also altered since the previous application, as Daventry has now reached its rural allocations. Highways have raised concerns due to the lack of pedestrian visibility displays. This will involve additional ward to be removed to create wider access. However, officers considered, given the width of the footpath on the main road and also the impact on the character locality, which is within the designated heritage asset, we consider on balance, and considering Staverton is quite, in that location, it is quite quiet, it's considered that the highways come below the impact on the designated heritage asset, and it will not result in pedestrian safety issues. The main consideration is the impact on the designated heritage assets through the loss of an important open space. It is considered that the development will have a detrimental impact on the character and appearance of the conservation area through the loss of this open space. In addition, the proposal does not accord with the second part of policy R1, as it does not lead to an environmental improvement of the site. The application is therefore recommended for refusal. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor. We have one speaker, Mr. Wayne, as the agent.
Chairman, councillors, in essence what you have before you is a difference of opinion between conservation officers. The previous application for 2 dwellings was withdrawn, not on the principle of the site being developed, but the manner in which it could be developed. The advice you are now receiving is that any development on this site would be unacceptable. Having said that, it is accepted the building would not be prominent from the main listed building, the Green or Manor Road, and even Well Lane would have restricted views due to levels of landscape. So it's alleged that you will see it only as a glimpsed view between properties at the orchard, and you've seen some photographs that showed that a few seconds ago. Miss Booth admits she hasn't seen it from the woodlands or any public footpath. I have. It's not visible. So far as the importance of this site is concerned, it, together with other areas to the north and west, is seen as part of an important open area of land within the conservation area. As set out above, there is very limited ability for anyone to see this part of the open space from any public vantage point. So its contribution to the overall conservation area is very limited. Your officers accept the access to the modern wall to the front of the site does not need to satisfy the highway requirements, and also there is no adverse impact on the communities of neighbouring properties. The proposal removes the modern stable building adjoining the beaches, retains outbuildings to the beaches, and restores a garage outbuilding. So contrary to the advice of your conservation officer, there are public benefits. And so far as local residents are concerned, the support of the parish council is to be noted. Particularly if your views of your conservation officer that this proposal would substantially change the character of this area to be given weight. Chairman, we say this will not significantly or materially affect either the character or appearance of the conservation area. The dwelling will be seen as part of the built form of the village to which it visually relates. No objections are submitted to the design of the property, which has been carefully designed to minimise overlooking, whilst in detailing of materials to reflect the properties around the site within the conservation area. Your planning officers recognise that such detailing is the key to any new building visually integrating within the sensitive village core. We say this scheme ticks all those boxes. Chairman, I would respectfully request that you allow this application and follow the considered observations of the parish council. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wyatt. Right, there's 3 of you present. Are you going? You can go first, Councillor Patchett, or you 2 ladies?
Well, Chairman, I think I'd like to hear the local ward members' comments first before I
Okay.
it from a committee point of view.
Councillor Griffin.
Can Councillor Guildford go first, please?
Yes, Councillor Guildford.
Thank you.
We've got to arrange to do that first.
I'll stand up so that you can hear me. Thank you, Chair, for allowing me to speak. You have before you an application where it's the Conservation Officer's objection that's put before you. It's always difficult to please everybody, and in this instance, compromise has been attempted, as the agent has explained. Observations from my layman's opinion and local knowledge of the area is the size of the buildings would be in keeping with the vicinity. There's large houses within the green and the beaches, and there's 2 executive-sized houses on a smaller plot within the conservation area on the corner of Church Street, which leads off the Green and Daventry Road. These houses too had a prominent impact on the conservation area. There is also to be some confusion in my opinion, as to the site itself. Looking at the map that you had up there, 2 sides of the site, the orchard and the rear, are not in the conservation area, so the plot actually fronts from that on 2 sides. In addition, and unfortunately for the applicant, the proposed conservation and appraisal process that we've planned at Daventry for the past 2 years has not gone through, and had they been progressed, then that plot may not be designated as it is, as per the Daventry Parish Council's evidence that there's no objection from there. Regarding the impact on the site myself, I've walked it many times on my way to the Countryman. If I was commenting on the way back, I wouldn't listen to me. Regarding the view from Well Lane, again the picture was a little bit deceptive in that it's a canopy in Well Lane and that the greenery from the left-hand side has been cut down, but you wouldn't see the site at all once the foliage has grown back. I've also walked what we call the triangle walk in the village, which is through the woodlands, up through the orchard and back round again many times over the past 30 years with my dogs, which unfortunately have died now. So I cannot see the impact the open space would have, as you cannot see it from on the green, from the Well Lane, from woodlands. It's behind the brick wall, to use my hands. So for me there would not be a loss of important space. So in conclusion, I would ask that the committee consider approving this application, that it will not adversely affect the character of the conservation area, that there are planning policies in the NPPF that it could be approved under in the District Local Plan, GMHS 222. You mentioned R1 part of it, about the environment. If this property was used with the paddock, there'd be lots of CO2 emissions going through. So I ask the committee to consider approving this application.
Thank you, Councillor Goodman. Councillor Goodman.
Thank you, Chairman. I also would like to speak on behalf of the Parish Council. Having listened to what the previous speakers have said, I'm in full support of everything they've said. When I've looked at this, I find it very difficult to understand why, in my view, there's already a precedent for this type of building. There are 2 large executive homes built in the conservation area on a smaller plot. So it seems to me that there is a real precedent there. The open space apparently isn't visible from most of the village, if at all, and it is actually not in a conservation area. It's only bounded on 2 sides. The Parish Council consider this to be a restricted inbuilt village, as I'm sure you will agree, and here is an opportunity for another family house within this area, and I would ask the committee to take a sensible view, a practical view, and provide this further family house within the area, which will not be a blot on the existing landscape. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Goodman. Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Chairman. Okay, well, we'll look at the highway issue first. Now, the green is a very quiet area of Staverton, and I'm sure that if I stood in the middle of the road outside the house there for half an hour, I would have no danger of getting run over. It's that quiet, you just don't see cars along there at all. So I think that the highways are over-engineering the recommendations there, and I think the applicant is quite right in that there's no pedestrian or highway safety issues at all with having a house in that position. With regards to the house being in the plot itself, it is within the listed building, and members earlier have gone through conservation training, so it will be entirely up to you as to how you apply that training to this particular application. I see it as finely balanced because the property is within the village confines, although it's within the conservation area, and there is a precedent elsewhere in the village for building houses in grounds. So I think what I'm going to do now is listen to see what other members have to say before I do anything else again.
Thank you, Councillor Hatchett. Not a lot, by the way, Councillor Hatchett. Councillor Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman. There is no such thing as precedent. Each application has to be dealt with on its own merits. This is in the view of our conservation officer, a bad idea. It is also against policy now, since policies changed when we passed our rural housing target, and that brings into being some more stringent tests that have to be passed before we allow development in a rural area. And it is still my opinion that this does not pass those tests, therefore it's against policy, and I recommend that we follow officers' advice and refuse the application.
Thank you, Councillor. Do we have a second? Councillor Andrews, would you like to speak now?
No, thank you.
Okay.
I believe a lot of what I've said.
Okay, any other members? Right, if not, we have a proposal the application be refused as per officer's recommendation, which has been seconded. All those in favour, please show. Those against? Okay.
I'll register abstention.
Abstention. Can you register an abstention for Councillor Paget? So the application is refused for the given reasons. The next application is in Stratton 0514.
Yes, thank you, Chair. This is a site at Daventry line in Stratton. Quite a long line which goes back into the Brixworth Road through the village and meanders down, as you see there, turns into the country lane at the end. And this is an outline application to build two houses at the end on the site that you see there. The only thing that's not a reserve matter is the access, and the access would go from New Tree Lane. There have been some indicative plans submitted that show what houses might look like, but it effectively is an outline application. I think our main concerns are that it's outside the village confines anyway. As you'll see from the photos, it looks like a field. It doesn't look like anything other than a field. So I suggest by our normal definition of village confines, it's beyond the existing built area of the village. And additionally, as you've heard from Councillor Chandler, we now have the second half of the policy, R1, the Joint Core Strategy engaged, where it has to either support local services or basically do environmental improvement. Our view is that it certainly isn't an environmental improvement, and the suggestion that a public footpath could be built, as shown on the slide that we see shortly from one of the speakers. We've got two issues with that really, that we don't think is particularly relevant to this development anyway. We don't need a footpath as a result of the two dwellings at the end. But even if it is, it's our understanding that they don't control or own all of the land in question anyway. So again, we don't really think it could be included in our Section 106 agreement legitimately, because it would bind landowners that are the applicant to the commitment. And the other issue I should have just mentioned is we should also have eligible financial consideration part, as well as saying SIL doesn't apply to this because it's an outline. We should have also just mentioned new homes bonus. But again, we wouldn't have given that much weight as planning officers. We wouldn't have been huge amounts of money for the two dwellings anyway, but we gave that, would have given that little weight to make our mind up. And the other thing is just to mention the Stratton Nightwood plan. I'm sure it will come up in discussion, but again, it's at a very early stage in the adoption process. So again, we've given that very little weight, including the proposal that you'll see to put the footpath down to the Brampton Valley Way. So just summing up, we think it's outside the confines of the village anyway, and additionally, it isn't an environmental improvement, so it fails the new test at the end of policy R1, and that there's no justification for this dwelling, or these dwellings rather, to be on this site. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Keith. We've got two speakers. Mr. Emerton is against the application. Okay, so you have 3 minutes.
Thanks, thank you, Chair. I represent a number of the properties along Yew Tree Lane, including 20 Yew Tree Lane, owned by Mr. and Mrs. Hamer, and Hunters Park, owned by Mr. and Mrs. Mallender, which are arguably the most affected properties by this proposal, as you'll see on your plan in front of you. Many of the residents are here tonight, and they are, of course, very grateful to the time and consideration given to this application by your officers. resulting in the very clear and firm recommendations set out in the report. Now, whatever the applicant may tell you shortly regarding the small scale of the development and their thoughts on the impacts it may have, there is one overriding issue at stake here which this committee needs to take a very careful view on. And this relates to development on protected land and the ever-growing demand for housing supply. However, the conclusion is very clear. The fundamental problem for the applicant is that there is absolutely no pressure or requirement on this committee this evening, or even the council as a whole, to agree to the release of protected land such as this for residential use. Doing so would set a very dangerous case law that would be used over and over again in similar applications and appeals across the district. As you all know, and as stated in the officer's report, national planning guidance requires local authorities to identify a 5-year supply of deliverable housing sites on an annual basis. The main reason for this is to demonstrate that brownfield sites and sites within built-up areas, i.e. generally sites that are appropriate for development, can be developed to meet rising housing demand without the need to release land that would normally be protected from development such as this. Making a case for the release of this farmland for development, however limited in scale, is fundamentally flawed, as your council have released their annual 5-year housing supply report in May this year, which confirmed that you actually have a 6-year housing supply, and that the delivery of housing as an authority has you've either matched or exceeded the requirements set out in the core strategy every year. So there is absolutely no pressure on the committee to release land like this. This means that you as an authority have performed very well and have persistently not under-delivered on new housing. The underperformance of local authorities in delivering housing is usually the stick that is used by applicants at appeals. In this case, however, and perhaps other similar cases that may come before you, you should feel confident in your decision-making tonight in refusing this application. The relevant planning policies were put in place to protect against the inappropriate slow creep of development into land that has and should continue to be protected, such as this. There is no doubt that villages such as Spratton do need to assist in meeting the ever-growing demand for housing across the district, and developable sites have been identified by the parish council within the village boundary. Again, the neighbourhood plan is very much in draft, doesn't carry too much weight, but it does identify sites within the village boundary that could be developed. And these sites need to be investigated further before there is ever a discussion regarding the release of valuable and protected open land such as the land that's subject to this application. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Spot on time. Local member.
There's another speaker.
I'm sorry, other speaker, you're dead right. I can't remember who it is. Mr. Holt, who's the applicant.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I do apologise for missing you outside.
It's all right. Members of the committee, ever since the inception of Brampton Valley Way, Spratton Parish Council has been keen to establish a footpath to link the village with it. The most sensible and scenic route is across my land. Having a footpath across farmland is a hassle at best, but most importantly reduces the saleability of that land and thus its capital value. I suggested to Spratton Parish Council delegates the principle of a small amount of planning gain to offset this capital loss. 4 years ago, a public meeting, minuted in the parish records, was held in the village hall. Some 60 people attended, who I addressed, outlining the following proposal. If I attain some development on the site before you tonight, with the backing of the community, then the village could have a new footpath more than a mile long. I am prepared to produce a unilateral undertaking to this effect. The motion was carried 55-5, and as you should note, the parish council has approved this application. The planning officer is incorrect when he says I do not control all the land. The planning officer in his report makes much of this development spoiling the landscape. The plot in the old farmyard is surrounded on 3 sides by new development. The other plot has the large house at the end of Yew Tree Lane shielding it to the east. The ground rises to the south, and to the west and north the land is higher and there are mature hedgerows and houses. The officer's opinion is that views will be spoilt from the existing footpaths. This is not the case, and the new footpath will open up a large area to be appreciated by many. I would like to question his interpretation of policy R1 in the West Northants core strategy. It emphasises the need to take into account local plans where the community has been consulted. Spratton has lodged a very detailed neighbourhood plan after 6 years' work and 2 public consultations. It emphasises the need for a small amount of development to keep the village, already ageing, a vibrant community. It includes a new village boundary and a desire for development in or adjacent to it. My site fits. The end of policy R1 advises that development can be approved even where housing supply is deemed to have been met in certain circumstances. 1. Brownfield site. One of my plots ticks this box as it is in an old farmyard. 2. There is a need to support the local primary school. At present there are 55 on the roll. 9 years ago, 110. 3. Is informed by effective community exercise prior to application. The public meeting and neighbourhood plan are clear evidence of that. The fact that 2 well-sited and designed modest family homes are new will soon be forgotten. The new footpath will be there forever. I urge you to vote in favour for the benefit of the whole community, or at least come for a site visit. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And I'm sorry I missed you earlier on. Councillor French.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I'm a little conflicted as I've been approached by both sides of this argument and I've listened to them carefully.
Is that £5?
It's not much.
It's £5. That's how much it costs if a phone goes on.
I was obviously at that meeting that Mr. Holt refers to, and I know that quite a large proportion of the village are very keen to have a safe footpath down to the Brampton Valley Way, as we've explored a number of different routes, including down the main road. But that would cost millions of pounds in terms of actually building it. So to have it in terms of, in loose terms, planning gain is a substantial benefit to the village, which actually lacks a lot of footpaths. I have to say that where the green line is, the hedge line there, is actually, it falls away quite steeply. So views from the south, which is the bottom, are ameliorated. I do find it quite interesting that people in New Tree Lane living in new houses that are relatively newly built are complaining about new houses being built when their houses were built as extensions in greenfield sites to the village. So I would like to hear what other people say on the committee before I make a proposal, if that's acceptable.
Councillor Brown, thank you. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm not a Spratton Ward councillor, I'm a Brixworth Ward councillor, which does adjoin Spratton Ward, so I do know a little bit about the village from personal knowledge. I'm still a bit undecided about some aspects of this, Chairman. Planning is a question of balance, as we know, trying to balance harm against good and acknowledging the initial presumption to build that's inherent in Section 14 of the National Planning Framework. Now, I'm partly convinced that this rising land, if heard mentioned, would in fact, from many viewpoints, hide the intrusion of these 2 proposed houses. And certainly from many viewpoints I think it would. And the village in any case would be the background to it. So far I'm fairly happy with that. Now the footpath itself, that was certainly a benefit to the village, I think, despite what some people have said, because of the general health of the inhabitants and increased access to the countryside. But I've got concerns it's by no means a done deal whether it could actually be built. That is my concern. There's a possible positive, certainly. And in fact, especially if it could be made suitable for cyclists. I'm a cyclist myself, Chairman, and I might even end up using it. Sometimes I do bravely cross the ward boundary over Wallbridge Bridge on my bike into Spratton from time to time, despite the ancient Brixworth-Spratton rivalry, and I've got back safely to prove it. But does Spratton Village want this path? That's the question, I think. We don't really know. Or do they want that as opposed to some other benefit, perhaps? This is where it gets a little bit vague for me, Chairman. I'm not sure it would outweigh the aspects of the developments actually contrary to what the officers have said. So I hope I can hear opinions from the rest of the committee to help me really in my decision. Because again, like a member before me, I'm a little unsure about this application.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Councillor Paul.
Thank you, Chairman. Much has been made of footpaths. However, footpaths is not part of the planning application. As I see it, the land that we are talking about is part of a special landscape area. Clearly, it is outside the confines of the village. I do disagree slightly with my colleague, the previous speaker, regarding the rising land, because I feel that the rising land would make it more visible. So I have several problems with the application and leaning towards the officers at this moment in time, but I'm happy to listen to my colleagues going forward, Chairman.
Thank you. Keith, you'd like to make a comment?
Yeah, it's just to pick up on the point about whether it's brownfield land or not. Just to say, Chairman, that as it says in the MPPF, where it's got a definition of previously developed land, it said this excludes land that is or has been occupied by agricultural or forestry buildings. So by saying it's not brownfield land.
Any more comments? Yes, sir.
Thank you, Chairman. This is clearly a site which is beyond the village confines. It is clearly not satisfying the enhanced tests of policy R1, and for those two reasons we should follow officers' advice and refuse this application. I made that a formal proposal.
Thank you, Councillor Chaplin. Do you have a second? Several hands went up. Gentleman at the back. Do you wish to speak, Councillor Parker?
I'd only support the previous speaker when it clearly states it's outside the confines of the village, it's in an SLA area, we've got a 5-year land supply, we've done it for the rural villages. I can't see what we need further to talk about. It's fairly plain to me.
Thank you, Councillor Parker. Any other comments? In which case we have a proposal that the application be refused as per officer's advice. This has been seconded. All those in favour of that proposal, please show. Those against? Abstentions? Abstention 1. The application is refused for given reasons. The next application is in Civitas, and the number is 0539.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah. This is a site in Civitas. I mean, it relates to the nursing home, as you'll see in the report, which is towards the green area on the right-hand side there. What's been proposed here is to take an existing house and extend it to turn it into 2 houses, and also to replace an outbuilding in the rear area with another smaller 1-bedroom house. So it's effectively 3 houses on the site that is currently 1 house. As I've said, it is in the confines of the village. The extension itself, on its merits, is in accordance and in appearance with the property. We're happy with the parking arrangements that have been proposed. But having considered the policy test now imposed on us by R1, we're now saying that as it's been put forward as supporting a local business, a local need for staff in a nursing home, but it does support a local service, and on that basis we're going to suggest an additional condition be added to make these subject to an occupancy of staff only, so that it effectively overcomes the policy requirements of R1 to demonstrate that it is when used in connection with a local service. So that amendment, Chairman, we're recommending approval to you.
Thank you, Keith. We have 3 speakers. Mr. Lloyd is against the application. Number 1.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, may we thank the committee for the opportunity of responding to this issue and present the following. Together with, on behalf of the other 24 parents of the top parishioners who recorded collective objection to the original planning application and subsequent amended application, we would also thank the planning officer for recognising and acknowledging our various points of objection and basis of argument thus far. Both I and all the others remain resolute in our confirmed and firm objection on the grounds that the latest version of the amended application is flawed because the proposed tandem dwelling to the rear would result in an inappropriate, incongruous form of development, detrimental to the character and appearance of the street and the surrounding environment, which, if allowed, would present an undesirable erosion of the village council's ability to resist further similar built forms. Collectively, we would all reaffirm the reasons we chose to settle in Civital are because it is a small, compact, rural village with great charm and a majority of pleasant and friendly folk. It is essential that sociability and individual support remain both important and enjoyed in a small community. Collectively, our neighbours include many middle and older aged, and happily a number of younger families with children, though it would be good to have more of the young. Quality and strength of our village is and must remain based on private, house-owning individuals who will complement the whole. Availability of suitable housing for all levels, especially younger families seeking an exercise of house in a rural setting, with schooling and neighbouring villages, is paramount. The latter is scarce and the situation exacerbated when such housing, like the house in question on Daventry, are taken to become staff hostel accommodation, thereby changing the use. This impacts on us all further because of the nature of the property in question within our midst, which does not interact with any other residents and may affect the values and resale of properties around. The other problem relates to the parking, which cannot be substantiated with certainty for any 2 vehicles now, where either 4 or 5 people may reside, as all would require transport from time to time to access amenities outside of Civital, and likely to be visited by others in vehicles. Thus, it would fail to demonstrate that vehicles could safely utilise the spaces without substantive impact on the safety and convenience of the public highway, and as such, the development as a whole would fail to comply with the Council's adopted car parking standards. The on-road parking on Welland Rise is almost at crisis level, and does not need or justify further traffic affecting the flow and safety for all. Therefore, we would all most earnestly, with respect, ask the committee to deny the application as it stands. In conclusion, Mr. Chair, may we thank the Council Committee for hearing our views and finding.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Dickinson, Parish Council.
Good evening, Chair. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'd just basically like to reiterate what my colleague here has said, and also view the feelings of the Parish Council and its parishioners. We still feel that it is an overdevelopment of a site on a single plot. We still have concerns over additional parking on Welland Rise. In principle, we feel we have no issues with the concept of splitting the original property into 2 separate and smaller dwellings, including the minor extension works that this will entail. This obviously still assumes that the street parking arrangements can be made. However, we do feel that the proposal to demolish the garage and infill behind the property with another dwelling is totally unacceptable. This would certainly feel an undesirable precedent, possibly leading to further silly developments over time, which we feel could change the character and the current plan of the village. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, sir. The other speaker is Mr. Gover, is it the applicant?
I'm the applicant, sir. I own Sibitoff Manor Nursing Home, and I live adjacent to Sibitoff Manor Nursing Home. Sibitoff Manor is a community nursing home serving the needs of 41 vulnerable residents of Daventry District Council. It employs just over 70 staff, and it's necessary for Sibitoff Manor to be able to attract staff in such a rural location, to be able to offer to provide those needed with accommodation. I would stress, Chair, that this is not an application for change of use to a hostel. That would be completely outside this application. This application is to take one large ex-council house property and turn it into 3 small, affordable houses for staff that work at Sibitoft Manor. We'd be only too pleased to accept a condition that said those premises were only to be occupied by staff employed at Sibitoft Manor. Someone has very kindly come today to speak for 24 of the residents of Sibitoft who object to this proposal. I've come today to speak for the 41 vulnerable residents who need the help of the 70 staff and need us to be able to recruit and retain staff. And I would stress that the reason that our staff are unable to afford properties generally in the area to rent or to buy isn't because they're underpaid. We pay far more than the National Health Service and pay our nurses twice the national living wage as proposed by the government for next April. Our scheme has been substantially amended in consultation with Daventry District Council planning officers to ensure it fully complies with the Council's requirements and planning policies and is designed to provide affordable housing for our staff. Please approve the proposal.
Thank you, sir. Local member, Councillor.
Yes. Thank you, Chair. I'd like to thank you, Chair, for the opportunity to speak in support of the residents of Sibitoft against the development in Welland Rise. I'm also appreciative of Mr Dickinson and Mr Lloyd taking their time to come and make their representations on behalf of the parish and on behalf of the residents. May I also thank the planning officer, from the planning department on this application. The papers, as usual, are very, very well prepared. However, my view and the view of many of the residents is that this development is not wanted, and that you have heard the arguments articulated that from both Mr Dickinson and Mr Lloyd. I would like to draw your attention to Policy R1 of the West Northamptonshire Joint Strategic Local Document, which has already been mentioned, with regard to the further criteria that this development needs to meet because of the extra development. As we all understand, is that the rural requirement for development has been satisfied, and therefore there are further criteria that need to be met. The officer states that this is a local service and therefore meets criteria too. I would challenge that with regard to what does local mean. This is a district facility. That criteria appears to me to indicate a local surgery, a local school for the locality of Sibitoft. I believe the officer has taken a far broader, more generous view on what local needs, and therefore this development does not fit that criteria. And in fact, it doesn't fit any other criteria, and therefore, by definition, should be refused. So I put that towards the committee for consideration, and I respectfully suggest that the development be rejected. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, sir. Members. Councillor Frenchman first.
Thank you. Yes, I have certain problems with this application. It seems to me that it is an overdevelopment of the site. I'm particularly worried about the parking. As I understand, there'll probably be 6 people staying in these houses, and I think to have 2 car parking spaces creates a problem of the greatest magnitude in an area that probably has a problem already, especially as it's probably, and I know you said the manors in the green area as it was on the map. I'm guessing if it was raining, most of them would want to drive to work anyway. My other question is, looking at the site of the hospital, why they don't build something in the grounds of the hospital? But perhaps that's a consideration to look at another time. But I am happy to second that proposal that we refuse this application.
That's a proposal.
I thought you proposed it.
No, it's not.
Oh, sorry. I apologise then. Sorry. So I shall stay quiet for the moment.
Okay. Any other comments then, please? Councillor Paul?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. In reading the report, I would read on page 41, one of the bullet points that we proactively drive and support sustainable economic development. There is clearly a problem in care and care staff. We are an ageing population, it's only a couple of weeks' time before I reach 40, but we are, an ageing population. We need care homes. That's not beyond the realms of belief, because it's a fact. Also, reading the report, I have a problem with 26 identical letters. I don't really like the idea of 26 identical letters, but maybe that's just me. The problem that I have is that back to square one, recruitment of staff in the care, dare I call it an industry, but at the end of the day it's a vocation. And we need to do things to employ. I picked up on what our officer said, and I also picked up on what the applicant said about a condition regarding that it is only used for members of the staff. I mean, can I take perhaps legal advice on whether that could be applied, Chairman?
There's absolutely no reason we shouldn't have such a condition.
The applicant's willing to accept it with Keith, you want to make a comment?
Well, what I really want to say, Chairman, if you're going down the road of when asked to refuse these, if you look at the photographs that are already there, in terms of overdevelopment that's been suggested, there's already an outbuilding at the back anyway, which is going to be replaced with a slightly larger single dwelling. I don't think there's any problem with the extension. As you saw on the plan, there's still a gap down the side where it would be possible to park additional vehicles, should it be necessary. And as you can see, that it's already used as a side access down the side of the house anyway, so there wouldn't be any issues with noise and disturbance additional to what you've got now, because that is used as a garage in the back. And if you see the neighbour's property as well, they've got a similar arrangement in any event either side of the fence there. Hopefully it'll come up in a minute. There you go. And the other one. You can shut that other one. So what I'm trying to say is, if you're going to refuse an area development, the highway authority are happy with it. They don't have a problem with the parking. They actually say we are happy with the amended layout. So you're not going to get any support on parking. The buildings are effectively physically in the same place as they already are. I don't personally see how we can sustain such a reason for refusal. And in terms of the point about the local service, etc., I mean, even if it's for the district, it is in this village, and this is clearly easily within walking distance, and it may well be that some of the staff that are unemployed don't even have a car, and they've literally got to just walk to the end of the road there to get to work. So I can't really see how we could sustain a reason for refusal on overdevelopment, or that it doesn't support a local service. I mean, clearly is at the end of the street, effectively. That is the local service, and walking to work would be the most sustainable form of transport could be. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Patchett.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. But as members know, I like to support rural businesses, and I think that the general idea is quite a good one. And you know, staff in this profession do need a place to stay close to work, and to rent somewhere is a big chunk out of your salary. So I would support that. With it being close to work, I mean, you're going to reduce traffic movements if they lived in another village somewhere else. The thing I do have a problem with is converting Plot 3 from a garage to a new dwelling, which is what we're talking about here. And I also have a problem with the condition. I've just spent the last half an hour prior to this meeting discussing enforcement of conditions, and the Chief Planning Officer has effectively shrugged his shoulders and says, well, we don't enforce all conditions all the time, we struggle to enforce conditions. So putting these conditions on is all very well, but I can't see how later on down the line somebody might be saying that they might be dividing the plot into individual sellable dwellings, and the whole situation changes. So I can't support this application, Chairman.
The idea of the condition would be so that the applicant couldn't sell their houses straight away off to somebody else and make a whacky big profit. The idea is the condition that he uses it. Should he want to do that, he has to make another planning application. That's the idea. Councillor Frenchman again.
Yes, if I could ask officers a question. I understand we have a policy on parking spaces, which is 1.5 per house.
There isn't any parking standards anymore. When the coalition government first came in, they abolished parking standards, so you can have what you like, basically. But I mean, I'm taking my cue from a very specific comment in the report from the Highway Authority that says no objection in respect to the amended proposals, which is what you've got before you. So if the Highway Authority aren't objecting, as I say, to try and have a reason for refusal based on inadequate parking, it's going to be a struggle.
Are they commenting on parking or just the highway safety?
No, they're commenting on the whole thing, parking in the whole world. As I said, it's an existing garage in back anyway, so if a car went down to the one-bed unit at the rear, that situation's already existing and could carry on.
Councillor Chandler.
Thank you, Chairman. I know this business quite well, actually. I've visited it several times. Not as a prospective customer, I hasten to add. And it is providing a vital service, and it's providing the sort of service that you wouldn't provide at a village level, because it's not just a place for dumping granny. It's a proper pucker care home. The care they provide there is quite remarkable, and if you've never visited such a place, I recommend that you make contact with the proprietor later about the visit. So I don't agree with the contention that it doesn't comply with the test in the extended policy R1, because the local service doesn't just mean the immediate parish area, it means the local area, and there is a great need for this service. I know that. I also agree with the other comments in the officer's report. I share my other colleagues' concerns about 26 identical letters. We used to say that we would consider such a bunch as a petition rather than individual submissions. I don't have a problem. The condition is monitorable and enforceable, and with that added condition, Chairman, I'm happy to propose that we accept officers' advice and approve the application.
Thank you, Councillor Jarman. Do you have a seconder? Councillor Paul. I've got Councillor Carr, then Councillor Paul to speak next. Councillor Carr.
Thank you, Chair. My only concern really is if I'm minded to approve this application is most the councillors have made reference to it being available properties for the working staff. I've just wondered how many councillors here would be of a change of mind if the properties wasn't for the working staff, so they were going to go onto the open market, or the condition that this council is now trying to put in there that it remains for the staff of the home. It just worries me somewhat that surely it should be on planning grounds, and it's either we approve it on principle because of the size of it, etc., not for its use. Surely, Chair, that doesn't come under the planning application.
It is covered like that, and you would, if it did change to it being sold off for separate units, it would require planning permission, and you would all have the chance to say what you thought of it then, but that's a different time. Pete?
I was just going to say, Chairman, we've already had advice from the council's legal advisor that it is appropriate to put the condition on. The reason for putting a condition on is because it has to meet the exception that we're now talking about in policy R1 to be for the local service. If it wasn't for the local service, then it would just be the same as what we've already seen tonight, which you've already reviewed, which are effectively more dwellings within the confines of the village. But that doesn't make it acceptable anymore. It has to meet further tests. So in order to meet those tests, it has to support the local service, and that's why we're putting the condition on. And that would be the reason for putting the condition on, to make sure it does comply with that second part of policy R1, so that is the planning reason.
Thank you. Councillor Paul?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I think it's all been said whilst they've been speaking. I've been browsing through condition R1 again. I'm happy to support my colleague and second the motion to approve.
Yes, we've got you second then. Councillor Patchett and Councillor Robinson. Not Councillor Patchett. I beg your pardon, Councillor Frenchman and Councillor Robinson.
Sorry, Chair. Just a question again to the officers. Part 2 of R1 required to support the retention of improvement. Then it finishes with an and it has to also show the community involvement and effective community involvement. And I don't think that can be shown in this particular respect, can it?
Would you like to answer that?
No, it's just community involvement.
It depends on the view you take on what that means, in what context it means, basically. But obviously, the parish council have been consulted on the application, and we've got mixed views in the village. Some people obviously would support the proposal, and we've heard 26 people are against the proposal. But I think
It just say prior to the submission of the planning application.
Well, I think to be honest, the way that was been written, it was for a larger scale proposal. It didn't just move one house. I can't imagine personally people are going to go if they want to do it one house and ask the community if they're all right if they make a planning application. I think that was more based on larger scale development.
With respect, that's not what it says.
Oh, I know.
So I'm making the point.
You've got to interpret what you think it means, I guess. And that's
just raising the point, Chair.
It can be interpreted different ways. Councillor Robinson.
I was just going to, thank you, Chairman, I was just going to point out and remind councillors that basically as the applicant himself volunteered this condition, should we choose to insert it. And I have to say that Sibitoft, in fact, is a very charming village. However, we do have to support rural enterprise, and particularly this type of rural enterprise, in my view.
Thank you. Right, that's enough comment. We have a proposition that the application be approved, subject to the additional condition that limits the use of the buildings to the staff of the nursing home. All those in favour, please show. Those against? Right. No abstentions? No, the application is approved, subject to that additional condition. Next application is in Longbuckby 0584. Actually, Longbuckby Parish, but Longbuckby Wharf. No.
Thank you, Chairman. This is a site which is located to the north of Longbuckby Wharf. The site is located within the Grand Union Canal Conservation Area and is a semi-detached dwelling located off the canal's tow bar. The adjoining property has permission to use the premises as a gift shop. This is an application for the construction of a single-storey side extension to form a tea room. The proposal is set back from the main elevation of the property and is considered to be subservient to the main dwelling. The proposal seeks to serve passing walkers and boaters, given its distance away from the main road. Concern has been raised regarding the impact on the canal network. The Canal and Rivers Trust do not have an objection to the proposal as it's only small scale. Concern has also been raised regarding highway safety. It's considered the proposal will not have a detrimental impact on highway safety. The site is not visible from the main highway. In regards to the concerns regarding the private roads, planning does not override any other legal restriction. Therefore, the owners of these roads still have the control over who parks on their land or uses their land. Overall, it is considered to be small scale without a detrimental impact on the character or appearance of the locality, which is a designated heritage asset. The proposal will not affect the highway safety or the running of the canal. The application is therefore recommended for approval. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Captain. We have one speaker, Mr. Hill, who's against the application.
Mr. Chairman, councillors, my name is Peter Hill and I've lived in George Lane for over 40 years. Tonight I represent the concerns of a number of residents. While none of us object in principle to a tea room, we do have serious concerns regarding the road safety aspect due to a lack of access and parking. Now, the anchorage itself is situated on the towpath side of the canal, and there is only pedestrian access via the canal towpath. The owners of the anchorage do have vehicle access to their property, but this is from the A5 via Old Watling Street, the privately owned Brewhouse Lane, a narrow canal bridge and a track across 2 fields. So it's not surprising which is the easy option. There is no vehicle access from George Lane to the anchorage. The applicants state that they are aiming their proposed business towards canal walkers and boaters. Our concerns are that the people will drive to the wharf and attempt to park their cars either in George Lane itself or on the busy Three Bridges Road. There should be 2 photos that demonstrate the pulling out problems. Hey-ho. We have already had issues with people parking close to the entrance of George Lane. And indeed, over the years, there have been a number of accidents in the area, some very serious. Also recently, a female resident of George Lane was subjected to a serious road rage incident as she attempted to exit onto Three Bridges Road, her view being obscured by badly parked cars. George Lane is privately owned and maintained by the residents. The applicants or their clientele are not entitled under any circumstances to use it for their access or parking. I therefore respectfully request that this application is refused on the grounds of highway safety. No one, particularly the residents of George Lane, wish to see any accidents caused due to inconsiderate parking by visitors to the anchorage. Thank you.
Thank you. As there is no other one, but remember here, it's in my bid. What Mr Hill says is exactly right. It probably doesn't seem too easy by pictures to see, but as you go back from Longbuckby, as you go back towards Longbuckby, go down to Longbuckby Wharf, you'll see a part that's all a narrow part. You go by the narrow part and about 25 yards along on the left is a turning left. It's called George Road, which services, that's the road you'll see servicing, it goes down to the canal. The shop on the canal, which wants the extension, is the other side of the canal. So if you went to it for walking, you'd have to walk along George Road, over the lock, and along to the shop. No problem with people walking. The problem is there's an existing problem with people going along there parking and want to look at the canal because canals are pretty and nice. So they leave their cars along there. If I drive along there in my van, I just can't get out. I can't even turn around at the end. And also you would block everybody's driveway because there's virtually nowhere to park. There's the entrance. Now that looks brilliant. On that tarmac at the front though, people can't emerge from there because there are cars parked. You see the opposite park on the right there are cars parked there all the time because there's a large house now turned into, firstly, multiple occupation. So it's dangerous to come out of there. Everything the objector has said is dead correct. The only thing that's difficult, and I'm sure you'll understand this, Mr Hill, I'd be against it exactly the same as you, but there isn't a planning reason, because unfortunately the highways don't object to it. We've been in verbal contact with them, and the highways think it's perfectly alright. And they suggest because it's a private road you could put barriers up and things like that to stop people going along there. So although it doesn't look bad there, but believe me, when you drive back there to Stratton tonight, as you go by there, you will see cars parked everywhere. So it's right, it is a traffic problem, but highways don't object. So although I object to it, because people will drive down there to go over there to the tea shop, as well as people using boats to do it, which is a shame. There is no planning reason I accept to refuse it. Members. Councillor Paul.
Well, quite honestly, Chairman, I see far more accessible tea rooms, hostelries, canal side, than having to squeeze up a narrow lane and upset anybody parking. I think the idea of herds of people leaving Daventry, Longbuckby, Norton, or any port east and west to go to a tea room on the canal with such difficulty just doesn't bear thinking about. It's never going to happen. The odd hiking group might call in there, but it is, they're purely simply for the canal trade, and I certainly don't have any problems with it. As you said, it is a private road. If they want to put bollards or stop traffic, then that's a civil matter, it's not a planning matter, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Paul. Keith,
Just to add, Chairman, it's our understanding that highways have said if people put signs on the verge there advertising the tea shops down that lane, they will remove the signs. I think they are concerned, but as you say, because it's a private road, they're basically saying, well, there's nothing we can do about it. But also, as we've said, because it is a private road, the residents can put some sort of restrictor in there to stop casual haulers just driving down there. But as I say, if a sign appears on highway land at the end, highways have said they will remove it.
Thank you. Councillor Patchman.
Yes, I hear what Keith's saying. I just wonder where highways expect anybody to park. They obviously haven't taken that into consideration. I mean, if the road is blocked or people don't want to go down it, they're just going to leave their cars parked on Three Bridges Road, aren't they? If they can find somewhere to park.
Well, how would they get deliveries?
That's a very good point,
I
Chair.
mean, that's the only,
Yeah,
it's
so
a long
it's
walk,
like-
and there isn't really any parking there. And it would rely on going through that little
So is that,
little gap there. They're not allowed to drive up there. It's a
Yeah.
private road, so.
so why don't highways identify that as a problem?
It's also small scale. It's only operating Wednesday to Sunday for a certain amount of time. It is keyed out. It's keyed for canal and towpath users. It's not really visible from the highway. Yes, it may accommodate people who know about it, wish to drive to it, potentially parking on the highway, which if there's no restriction, which we can't really stop. At the same time, having spoken to the Highway Authority, they don't seem to have too much of an issue with the proposal. Yes, they'd rather not see any parking, but at the same time, or would like to see some parking, but it's a limited site. It's for a small scale development, not for all the time. And they said pretty much they wouldn't have an objection. So
I think this is out of difficulty, Chairman. Once again, we've got a situation where the Highway Authority aren't objecting. So if we want to refuse something on highway grounds, we're going to struggle, obviously. This is the problem we've got, really.
Could I ask how building materials are going to get to there? Because they ain't going to George Road, they're not going to be carried on people's backs. And believe me, you couldn't drive across there from the A5 with a four-wheel drive in the winter.
Canal barge, yeah.
There's no other way. You can't speak non-trade.
Chairman, if I could just add one small thing here. The difficulty is this is a private road. And that's the difficulty with the Highway Authority as well, because they're not responsible for the private road. The residents along that road are responsible for that private road. And they will control who can or cannot go along that private road. If they want to put a bollard on and give keys to people joining it and emergency services, that would be a matter for them. And so whether or not they give permission to enable the building materials to go along that road would be a matter for them. And then they'd have to straddle it across the blockade to get it to the premises. Well, that would be a matter for the owners of the anchorage. So it is not actually a highway consideration at this point. It is clearly on the, what is it, the Well Bridge Road? Three Bridges Road, I apologise. But it isn't along this private road.
Thank you. Councillor Adam.
Thank you, Chairman. I agree with this. Highways don't have any objections. The Anchor Cottage next door do not have any objections. Canal and River Trust don't have any objections. In fact, it actually says in here that the applicant has agreed a method of supplying minerals to the site which the Canal and River Trust consider acceptable. It doesn't say what it is, but I believe that they might take it along the canal, just from the road. Has this been proposed?
It's up to
Right, in that case, then I propose we accept.
Councillor Adam, do you have a second? Yes. Thank you, Councillor Chancellor. All those in agreement, if there's nothing else to say, please show. Could you note that I voted against it? local people will not be happy. I'm sorry, Mr Hill, but that's the position.
There we go.
You have to have a planning reason nowadays. Well, you've always had to.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. The next application is 0773 and is in Woodford Holt, one for amendments. Still notice Woodford Holt, this last one.
That's definitely Thank you, Chairman.
Right, Councillor.
The site is located within the confines of the village of Woodford Halls. The property is a semi-detached post-war property on the corner side. The proposal is for a single-storey garage to the side of the property. The parish has concern regarding overdevelopment of the site and highway safety. The proposal is considered to be subservient to the main property, and given the size of the site and proximity to neighbours, the proposal will not have a detrimental impact on the amenities of the neighbours or the locality. Concern has also been expressed regarding highway safety. However, there is sufficient space to use the garage and turn and exit in the forward gear. The current access has not been proposed to be altered, but they still can access into the double garage. The application is therefore recommended for approval. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. You've got pictures of it, yeah? Okay, local member.
I don't quite know what to say, Chairman, to be honest.
Well, I can guess what you might say. Same as I said, but
when I saw this at committee papers, I rang there's a guy at Woodford Parish Council who does the planning applications. They all have their champion, and I rang him and I said, "What's all this about?" And he said, "Well, I don't know. I was off that week. The Parish Council sent a response in." And he said, I'll ask them on Tuesday at the meeting." So anyway, he rang me again this morning and he said they don't really know why either.
Well, I have to say, Councillor Patrick, when I looked at the Parish Council's comments, the three comments, I wish I'd have proposed that somebody has to provide a valid planning reason rather than a planning reason. They're planning reasons, but they're not valid, are they?
No, so I think the only thing I can do is propose approval.
Thank you very much. That's for sure. Councillor Patrick. We have a little second. No, that's all right. If nobody wishes to speak, that's great. We've got a proposal that the application be approved, which has been seconded. All those in favour, please show. It's unanimous.
Make a quick point, please, Chair.
Yeah.
When I got the committee papers, of course, I go on site to look at the drawings, and I have to say the drawings on this particular one I think are not acceptable, and I think officers possibly should make some representation to applicants to say that they need to be readable. Bear in mind we're only looking at a small screen, not a big screen like this, and they are almost impossible to read.
Thank you for your comments. We did speak about it.
Yeah, can I just ask, being a newbie and not fully understand the planning process yet, why this didn't go to delegate authority?
Because the Parish Council the objections weren't valid objections. No. So we ought to perhaps have the word valid planning reasons.
I second that amendment.
Chair, if I can...
Right, that concludes the meeting. Sorry, Gary.